We often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Faro.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hey, welcome along. It's me, Patrick Christie's here, once again on the 8 p.m. slot. Tonight, it's Debate Central. We'll be having scraps on everything from Shamima Begum to net zero. You will not want to miss a second. The BBC released a documentary about Shamima Begum today, and you'd think after releasing a podcast series with her called I Am Not a Monster, they might have toned it down a bit, but now Times Magazine as well have run a front page of her, looking like she was about to start her own reality TV show. The only way is ISIS, maybe? Be explosive. And speaking of ISIS and extremism, the independent review of Prevent is due to be released tomorrow with a variety of controversial leaks bubbling their way to the surface. The programme has been accused of funding extremists. You know, the exact opposite of what they're meant to be doing. Also, do you like your local council? Do you feel that you get your money's worth? Or perhaps, no matter how much you pay, they don't fill in the potholes and there's always a problem with the rubbish? Well, good news, people, good news, because a bunch of councils want to increase your tax. That's right, classic. It's never the other way around, is it? Kelvin Mackenzie will join me for a diatribe on all of that. And just to round it all up, the Prime Minister has created a new department and position called Energy Security and Net Zero. A contradiction, if ever I've heard one. What's next? The Department for War and Peace? We'll be debating that one too. And don't forget to let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. You can ask me anything and I will endeavour to answer it. That's all coming your way after the latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. Our top story tonight, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner has apologised for failings in the force after sentencing the former officer David Carrick today. The 48-year-old has been handed 36 life sentences and will serve a minimum of 30 years for sexual offences against a dozen women. Carrick pleaded guilty to 49 charges, including 24 counts of rape, all carried out whilst he was a serving Met police officer. Sir Mark Rowley said he's determined to root out the bad apples in the force.
People are going to be very shaken by this. I completely recognise that. We are determined to tackle this. Most of our people are great people, but we've been too weak at getting rid of the ones who aren't. So you're going to see, month by month, changes as we remove those individuals, and you can report on that. I know my words today aren't enough. People have heard me talk about plans, and they're going to want to see the action that we take over forthcoming months, and they will see that.
Meanwhile, Lancashire Police says it still believes Nicola Bulley fell into the River Wyre while she was out walking her dog 11 days ago. The underwater search for the mother of two continues. The force is also investigating around 500 lines of inquiry, although so far has not found any evidence of criminality. Specialist Group International, who are helping the police in their search of the River Wire, Peter Faulding told GB News the case is unusual.
When Nicola went missing on the day, the police divers were deployed into the river here to search, and normally if somebody drowns they go straight to the bottom, and that's in my 20 odd years of experience of dealing with drowning victims, you know, done the hundreds of cases. Now they go to the bottom, the river's slow moving, they won't go far, but the police divers, who are very professional, did not even find her then, and that's the weird thing.
The Foreign Secretary says 3 British people are missing following the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. Rishi Sunak has also pledged the UK's support to Turkey's president following the disaster that is believed to have killed more than 6,000 people in the country and neighbouring Syria. A British search and rescue team with 77 members with specialist equipment and dogs is currently assisting with the rescue effort in the country. The first 7.8 magnitude quake hit yesterday morning, with the second quake measuring 7.5 just a few hours later. The Prime Minister has revealed his new cabinet today following a reshuffle. He also created 4 new departments. Greg Hands takes over as the new Conservative Party chairman after Nadeem Zahawi was sacked. Kemi Badenoch is the new Business and Trade Secretary. Lucy Fraser has become the Culture Secretary, taking over from Michelle Donnellan, who's been made a new Science and Technology Secretary. The Business, Trade and Culture departments have been broken down into separate units, with Grant Shapps now the Energy Security Secretary. Those are your latest news headlines. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're watching GB News Tonight, where Laurence Fox has Patrick Christis in charge.
Well, thanks for that, Polly. OK, so remember the infamous jihadi bride, Shamima Begum? Well, she's still begging for the public's forgiveness. A month ago, the BBC divided opinion by releasing a podcast called I'm Not a Monster, which gave the controversial ex-ISIS bride a platform to give her side of the story, seemingly part of an attempt to humanise her and elicit some sympathy. Well, today, the BBC have released a documentary called The Shamima Begum Story, detailing her story travelling to Syria in 2015 to join Islamic State and her experiences living with the terrorist group. Well, to complete her press circuit, Begum was even featured on the front page of Times magazine. Yeah, there we go. Begum has claimed that she was trafficked and she does not think she is a bad person. But the question is, should we view her as an enemy of the state or just a child who was groomed and brainwashed? Well, here to debate this question is former counter-extremism coordinator Charlotte Littlewood, now of the Henry Jackson Society and political commentator and founder of anti-racism organisation Run Racism Out. It is Bushra Sheikh. Bushra, I'll start with you if that's all right. Should the BBC be trying to rehabilitate Shamima Begum's reputation?
Absolutely. They totally should be. And you know what? And I will tell you why. Because we, as the public, as a society, sometimes forget that she was just 15 when all of this happened. Because it has been so long and the story has, you know, clearly moved forward, we forget this element of it. And I just feel like the consideration and this empathy is lacking. So I'm genuinely for that. I feel like we need to humanise her again.
OK, I mean, that's quite a strong start. Charlotte Littlewood of the Henry Jackson Society, I'll throw it over to you. The ITV channel, they decided to go for Matt Hancock, didn't they? The BBC appeared to have stumped for Shamima.
Well, I would say I absolutely disagree, and that she should not be rehabilitated or seen as a victim, as it were. By seeing her as a victim, we're feeding into the very narrative that is inducing radicalisation in the first place. And you will see tomorrow with the Prevent review, William Shawcross being very heavily critical of the way in which the media portrays terrorists as victims. For it is this victim narrative that puts our young people at threat from radicalisation. So this is serving the very risk that we want to tackle.
But sure, what message does this send out to people who are 15 years old, say, who frankly think, well, I can actually go and join a jihadi death cult somewhere in the Middle East now and maybe sow suicide bombers into suicide vests and I'll just come back to Tower Hamlets after it's all said and done?
This is not really about what message this is going out to 15-year-olds. Actually, it's quite the opposite, because normally 15-year-olds are carrying on with their life and they're doing what teenagers do. And in these extreme cases, you will get individuals that come across these type of people online that are going to exploit them, that because they are vulnerable, they are naive. So this isn't a message 15-year-olds. This is a message to us as a society to say that this is not normal. This isn't the rule. You know what I mean? Like, we have to understand that.
Can I just ask quickly, before I go back to Charlotte, about this question of vulnerability? Is it just her age that for you makes her vulnerable? Because her teacher said that she was predicted to get top grades at school and that she was quite a smart girl, so she doesn't really seem to have any mental vulnerabilities, i.e. she knew what she was doing, no?
OK, right. So, you know what? Obviously, there are different components to this. And when we categorise someone that is vulnerable, there are lots of different elements. It could be her history in terms of family. What was her family dynamics like? What were her friendship circles like? What was she viewing online? This is stuff that we really need to consider. I myself, as a parent, this concerns me as well. This could happen to any one of our daughters, honestly, because of the way that the social climate is with being online.
OK, Charlotte, do you want to respond to all of that?
I think seeing her as vulnerable, seeing her as groomed, another word I've seen being used is trafficked, is just hugely insulting to those that were groomed and trafficked by the Islamic State. So I spent this afternoon having a look at some case studies, and I looked at Mazen, an 8-year-old boy who was abducted and trained to shoot Yazidi, his own people, and be complicit in a genocide of his own people. And then Nadia, who was abducted, gang raped, and then sold on various times. And there are 3,000 plus Yazidi women still missing. So I think when we're talking about trafficking, that is the trafficking. And Shamima Begum meticulously sought out a way in which to get to Syria. She even stole jewelry from her own parents to be able to fund her own traffic.
Because she was programmed that way. She was programmed like that to do that.
Can I ask Bushra on that then, Bushra? Why are you so convinced that she was thoroughly, completely and utterly brainwashed? What evidence is there to say that?
I will say that simply because everything points in that direction. Her age, her family, the climate that we live in society where people are Islamophobic. This is, you know, these are all contributing factors. You know, a 15-year-old thinking, OK, what do I need to do? Where is the help for these individuals? Rather than calling her, you know, some kind of criminal or a villain, she is a victim and she belongs to the UK. She is our problem if she is a problem.
Charlotte?
Are we missing something here, though? Are we missing the one thing that really is the risk, and that's the ideology at hand? And she said that she saw beheadings, and she was okay with that because she saw it as Islamically ordained. She said that she loved her husband and that she believed in him fighting for his religion. These are ideological issues. This is what we should be focusing on, what we should be tackling on, rather than looking at any other reason, anything else to blame other than the ideology itself.
Just to clarify, Bushra, do you think that, unless I misheard you, you think that Islamophobia pushed Shamima Begum to leave this country and join ISIS?
I'm not saying that was the sole purpose. I'm saying we have to accept that Islamophobia exists. And I'm telling you, when you ostracize people enough and they don't feel part of a community, they don't feel like they belong anywhere, this is when they become vulnerable to other groups that make them feel like they are welcome. This is serious.
With respect, she lived in Tower Hamlets. Charlotte, go on.
I said, and join a supremacist death cult. The answer to being socially ostracised, to these grievances, which are very real, I completely agree with you. The answer is not to see beheadings and think that that's okay and to go and join a supremacist, racist death cult.
Charlotte, I'll just sit with you on this. I don't know your personal circumstances, don't need to know. You've got a hypothetical 15-year-old daughter for the purposes of this discussion. And your 15-year-old daughter does this. Do you disown her completely, or do you fight for her to return to the UK? Charlotte.
Me, myself, personally?
Yes, yeah.
I think, myself, personally, I would take the risk of society and my responsibility over my daughter and the risk that I may have been a part of creating in that grievance matrix. So I would be very concerned about the society in which she would then be returning to and the risk that I would then be bringing to the UK. So I'd be concerned about the laws that we have here, concerned about what we can do to safeguard the UK from her when if she returns.
Sorry,
at the moment,
I'm just going to, honestly,
Go on, Bushra.
honestly, you need to ask a mother that question. Until you're a parent and you don't have a child, you do not know what you would do for them. It's very easy for you to have these theories and this mindset to say you wouldn't do that. It's very different when it's your child in front of you and this is happening to them. So I genuinely believe that that answer from you was not totally honest.
How would you feel, Bushra, if you lost?
Genocide, though, complicit in genocide, I find that so hard. If my child had become complicit in genocide, yes, I would have my concern as a mother, but I would then have my responsibility to society as a whole. Complicit in genocide, I don't understand how you can still have an awful lot of sympathy.
Because perhaps she didn't know what she was being complicit to. These are genuine questions.
If you're being really honest about this, though, Bushra, do you not think that Shamima Begum has any blame and culpability for this whatsoever? I mean, at the very least, she's guilty of being extremely thick.
Yeah, totally. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that she was completely innocent. Perhaps there are elements to this that she didn't know of. The point is that even if she is a problem, even if this is going to be a problem in the future, she's the UK's problem. So we need to bring her back. That's the fair system and have her trialled here and questioned here.
I'm going to finish on that one. With you, Charlotte. Yeah, go on, come back to that.
No, I agree with that. I think that the UK needs to take responsibility for the legal approach to returnees. And I think we're in a shambolic position at the moment with the laws at present. We need to have retrospective laws in which we can then charge people for joining and aiding and abetting terrorist organisations.
So that would be the very, very final word on this, Charlotte, just for some clarity. So you would take the bring her back but then lock her up approach?
Yes, and at the moment, the reason why we've had the approach we've taken is we didn't have the laws in place. So we need to sort out our legal approach to returnees, and then we need to handle the issue.
Look, both of you, thank you very much. What a way to start the show. Fabulous debate and discussion, that. Thank you so much. It's Charlotte Littlewood there, who is now of the Henry Jackson Society, former counter-extremism coordinator and political commentator and founder of anti-racism organisation Run Racism Out. Bushra Sheikh, both of you, great stuff. Thank you so much. Right, now, of course, The Times magazine didn't immediately respond for comment. That's about slapping Shamima on the front page. But there we go. There we are. Anyway, thank you to both of my guests, of course. What a way to kickstart the show. But loads of you have been getting in touch on all of this. We'll keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll go to those views very, very shortly. And indeed, coming up, we'll be discussing the long-awaited report on the government-led anti-terror group Prevent. A bit of a theme to the top of the show, but they will reportedly be accused of treating terrorism like a mental illness. Interesting stuff. Back in 3.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back, world. Now, before anything else, regarding that Shamima Begum documentary, a BBC spokesperson said, "This is not a platform for Shamima Begum to give her unchallenged story. This is a robust public interest investigation into who she really is and what she really did. We'd also encourage people to watch the documentary and make their own minds up." Right, that's out the way now. So, let's get your thoughts next on this. Dennis says, why is she able to get airtime? Who is funding her PR machine? Yes, Gary's been on. He says, she is a victim, without doubt, but the media have also done her a lot of harm. She needs to be returned, answer to her behaviour, and be rehabilitated. I can't help but wonder, though, Gary, it does come down to that question, doesn't it? Do you think that some people can be rehabilitated? So there are certain crimes, aren't there, where I think the jury is very much out on whether or not people can get better. I don't need to rattle all of those off, but one of those is terror offences. If somebody has been absolutely, completely, innocently radicalised, not to the point where they've Googled something a bit fruity on the internet about a particular ISIS document, but actually they've decided that they are going to leave their home and their family home and their school and their life and then go and join a jihadi death cult, maybe that's the kind of person who can't be rehabilitated. But Gary, if you think they can be, then you're a better man than me. Chris says, Patrick, she is an enemy of the state. What the hell is wrong with her standard bearers at the BBC and, in fact, the Times? For years, she was sewing up suicide vests, watching beheadings, championing ISIS. The thing is, as well, I mean, yes, I get that. The thing is, Chris, the unknowable factor in all of this would be is if ISIS had said to her, all right, you can leave and we will genuinely guarantee you safe passage out, whether or not she would have left. It's all very well and good saying she was trapped there. The fact is we will never know, will we? But the reality of the situation is she didn't leave. I can understand why she maybe wasn't allowed to, but she's now only begging for forgiveness and rehabilitation once ISIS has been crushed, and we can't avoid that, can we? Moving on. A long-awaited review of the government's anti-terror programme will be released tomorrow, and it is said that the programme will be warned that their work has wrongly treated terrorism like a mental illness. So who's this particular radical individual? A little bit like what we were talking about before, but this is a lot more localised now, and instead they're basically saying, we need to give this person love. Anyway, Prevent is a government-led programme that aims to stop people being drawn into terrorism by funding local authority partners to report extremism to police. But according to reports, the review is also expected to confirm taxpayers' money was handed by Prevent to groups promoting Islamist extremism. So the report that is due out tomorrow is expected to say that some taxpayers' money went to some groups that promoted Islamist extremism, including, in one case, allegedly, the Taliban. Not great, is it? Here to talk about this is Director of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre. It's Dr. Sheikh Ramsey, and Director of the think tank Bruges Group, Robert Olds. Both of you, thank you very much. Dr. Sheikh, I will start with you. It looks as though some taxpayers' money may have gone to groups who, well, frankly, quite like the Taliban. Not a great look, is it?
Yes, of course, it's not a great look, as you said. But at that time, I read the report. I know the Musharraf Hussain for a number of years. And of course, at that time, perhaps when the Prevent give the 200,000 to gone in, may he gone in the right direction. I have no idea, but now maybe man has been groomed or so and so and so. I cannot, of course, judge it on that. However, if the Prevent give a 200,000 pounds, 200,000 pounds to a person which goes and do the extremism, this is somebody has to answer back. That means the Prevent has to say why he gave the 200,000 pounds to the person which he was not reliable. This is a very important thing as to be.
Okay, just to paraphrase there, what I think you seem to be saying is that Prevent needs to basically say, well, this is why we gave this individual the money, as opposed to maybe that individual accounting for the fact that he may or may not have supported the Taliban. Robert Oles from the Bruise Group, I'll bring you in here.
Well, we talked about earlier, in the earlier segment, Patrick, about grooming, Shamima Begum being groomed. Well, it seems the organisation doing the grooming in the UK is Prevent. It's been throwing money at extremist organisations, and many of the terrorist attackers that have killed people, including a British Member of Parliament and many other people throughout the country, are, in a sense, graduates of Prevent. They were known to Prevent, part of Prevent programmes, and of course with these programmes they're made to feel like that they're actually the victim, as we was hearing from your earlier guest, that somehow it's our fault they've turned out the way they have. It's our Islamophobia, a made-up term, if I may like to add. Now, so really, in a sense, Prevent are encouraging, they're not solving the problem, they're encouraging it. And of course also they're dividing as well. They're dividing the Muslim community into insider groups and outsider groups, the right Muslims and the wrong Muslims, and throwing money at certain groups, and it's creating disharmony and discord where there needn't be any. And of course it's making people feel like they're victims and feel that they have a grievance against British society, and that's where the problem is.
OK, Dr Sheikh, I'll throw it your way. Do you think that Prevent or counter-terrorism measures are Islamophobic?
In one way, yes, of course. I believe, of course, as many things which they done. Prevent have been designed. I've been 20 years working with Prevent, and I help in the Prevent, or I give advice to the government or to the preventers how we can do it and how we can help to totally reduce to zero the extremism or the terrorism or so which you call it. But I believe, of course, yes, if you want to think the Prevent has been designed for the Muslim, there is nobody else that is there. I couldn't say in the Christians they say it is. Therefore, it has to be Islamophobic because it goes against all Islam. What I can say, it is Islamophobic, and we tried again. It was horrible before. The Prevent was horrible, awful, against all Muslim. Even they were talking about 9 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. But what we need to do, we changed it. I was, of course, member, and many changed the Prevent to be a good thing. But now they want to change it, which is wrong. I would have thought.
Okay,
it is,
right. Lots to get stuck into there. Robert, the implication there is that Prevent only focuses against radical Islam and is against all Muslims. Of
course, none of that was true. Of course, Prevent actually is increasingly focusing on what they call far-right extremism. It doesn't necessarily mean anything as a term, but we know what kind of groups they are targeting. They're moving away, in a sense, from their essential core mission of dealing with Islamic extremism, that kind of terrorism, which still remains the biggest threat, and focusing on groups. And if Prevent carries on this way, they'll be targeting anyone who seems to identify as cisgender, is heterosexual, and in a marriage. That's the way Prevent are going. It's going increasingly politically correct and moving away from the focus of what it should be working on, which is actually identifying those in the community who then need, in various communities that need to be subject to the force of law if they are engaged in terrorism. And the way to beat terrorism is through intelligence, it is through effective security measures, effective security policing, and, of course, a swift response and locking people up. And the reason we have less terrorism now is because, finally, the intelligence services have targeted Islamic groups groups that were involved in terrorism, but for many years they believed they couldn't actually penetrate such groups, and of course actually it's quite straightforward. And of course because ISIS has essentially been defeated, and people like Shamima Begum, who were engaged in terrorism essentially, are now living their lives in dreadfully run refugee camps, or of course have lost their lives as a result of an effective military campaign in Britain's destruction of ISIS, along with other countries.
Dr. Sheikh, just before I let you come back on that, feel free to come back on everything that Robert has said there, but there is just something I would like to drill down with you in, because one of the accusations that we're expecting to hear from this Prevent programme tomorrow is that taxpayers' money was given to Prevent, and some of that money, around £200,000, as you've already said, was given to a particular chap from a particular group who did support the Taliban, OK, allegedly. Do you think that somebody supporting the Taliban implies that they are a terrorist threat? Because that's quite a crucial point.
What we have to say, of course, you have to, what saying we got in the Islamic saying. It says not every Muslim is an extremist, and not every extremist is a terrorist. Therefore,
what about those who support the Taliban?
At that time, of course, Taliban now he came back again because America left or so. But if they are helping the Taliban or whatever, that's a real extremism. Real goes extremism toward the whatever you want to call it. However, I believe the Prevent give that 200,000. I didn't know about it. That was I didn't know giving money left and right and center. But I believe the Prevent give that £200,000. But it may be in God's right place at that time. And the man, which is, of course, Musharraf was saying, maybe said something which I'm not very sure. I have to read it, out of the context, taken out of the context, or taking or he gone in a wrong direction. However,
throwing taxpayers' money at extremist groups just makes us look weak and stupid, and makes it seem that the terrorists can get their way if they were to just complain and fight hard enough. Really, this is just absurd. We need to stop wasting taxpayers' money by giving it to Islamic extremists.
I'm going to have to cut in. I'm going to have to cut in on both of you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, OK. Look, both of you, thank you very much. A spirited debate, it's fair to say. That is, of course, the director of the Oxford Islamic Information Centre, Dr. Sheikh Ramzi, and director of the think tank, the Bruce Group, Robert Oles. I think we can all agree we could have probably carried on with that all day, but there we go. Right, thank you very much. We contacted the independent review of Prevent and Dr. Hussein's organisation, you heard him alluded to a lot there, for comment, and we haven't heard back. But yes, thank you very much, Robert, and indeed Dr. Ramzi. Now, coming up, something we all love. Yes, it's our local councils, a good old local council, renowned for efficiency, frugal spending, and really well thought out cycle lanes. Now, they want to hike your taxes again. It only ever goes one way, and Kelvin Mackenzie is here for a good old rant on that. Did you know that some councils are about £1 billion in debt? £1 billion. Don't go anywhere.
This Saturday at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood has been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, Grooming Gangs, Britain's Shame.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
The only way is up for bills. Certainly not my career. And now for council tax as well for some areas. Poorly managed councils Slough and Woking, amongst others, have asked the government to rise council tax rates by 9.99% and 15%, respective 15%, way above the 2.99% cap laid out in the autumn statement. Now, councils normally need to hold a referendum before increasing rates, but they have given special permission by the government. Should they be allowed to do this? Who is being held accountable for the poor mismanagement of the funds? Where's the money going as well? I want to know. Joining me to discuss this is the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. And Kelvin is going to talk to me about the shocking level of waste that some councils have. Kelvin, thank you very much. Slough Council. I mean, the amount of debt that this lot are in is absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? £700 million worth of debt for Slough.
But they're all unbelievable, Patrick. Slough in Berkshire, Thurrock, an absolute wasteland, financial mismanagement, and Croydon, between them, right, have literally billions of losses. They have gone into the commercial property market, right? They're not experts in that. What on earth are they doing? Literally gambling with council taxpayers' money. And the issue there is the councils have all gone bankrupt. And coming down the road is Woking as well. They're going to go bust. And I expect another one local to me called Spelthorne. I think they're going to go bust. And what's going to happen is that the local people who had no control over what these idiots were doing, who had no financial nous, they didn't know anything. And why would you rely on your councillors or your council officers to make big bets? In Thurrock, they went into the solar business. What are they doing in the solar business? No. And in Woking, they must have built every flat for 1,000 miles. And what's happened now? The market has collapsed. So these are massive problems. My issue is this. A third of your taxpayers' money, council taxpayers' money, goes in their pensions, goes in the officers' pensions and the workers' pensions. Why should you, as a resident, have to fund their inadequacies?
Well, it's absolutely bonkers. Can I just add to this? Can I just add to this for some more stats? Croydon is £1.6 billion in debt, supposedly. Croydon Council, that's according to reports. How on earth does a council... £1.6 billion. If you added up the council debt of Slough, Croydon, and Thurrock, you'd have the GDP of a small country.
Well, you've still got Woking to come. Now, Woking is one of the richest, well, even in Surrey, it's one of the richest areas. They owe $2 billion, and it's rising to $2.5 billion in 2025. How do I know? I spoke to the press office today, which came as a surprise to me, since if you can find a council official in their local town hall, as it used to be called, you could fire. I know in Elmbridge, the richest area, at Esher Town Hall, you could fire a cannon and not hit anybody. They are all, quotes, working from home, and they're working on ways of losing residents' money. I don't think everybody understands what a massive issue this is.
Well, they would say, wouldn't they, Kelvin? Kelvin, they would say, oh, well, we've had a really tough time because of the pandemic and because of the cost of living crisis and because of all of that stuff. But then I can't help but feel maybe it's slightly countered, Kelvin, by the likes of Haringey Borough Council spending around £160,000 of taxpayers' cash to remove a sign called Black Boy Lane. And you look at it and you go, what on earth are we getting for our services? I mean, the road formerly known as Black Boy Lane, I bet there's still a pothole in the middle of it.
Well, I did notice two things happened. It was called, they changed it to La Rose Lane, which was named after a guy who was born in Trinidad and didn't even come to our country till his mid-30s. I'm not saying the guy didn't do good work for his community, but it did seem bizarre. Yeah. And there was a big row even within Haringey about what should happen. But if we go back to the essential point, a 15% rise in council taxes, right? This applies to renters as well as homeowners. Everybody has to pay it, right? 15%. We've got energy problems, we've got food problems, and now out of left field, you're living in Thurrock, which is not a great area, by the way. I don't know whether you know Thurrock. It's not a rich area, and suddenly everybody's being asked for another 15%. This won't be the only council that goes this way.
Yeah, the government cops it a lot, and rightly so. The opposition cops it a lot. So your top-tier politicians, a lot of people go, well, they're not fit for purpose. I tell you what, it sounds like a pretty cushy gig, doesn't it, to slot yourself in at a bang-average local council somewhere in Slough where you're managed to preside over 760 million quid in debt and then plan to impose a rise of 9.99%. The fact is that they're driving areas like this, some would say, to hell in a handcar. And I bet if you asked the vast majority of the people in Slough who their local councillor was, they wouldn't be able to tell you, would they?
Right. There is an element of that, but I must say that all politicians are buggered up in this case. In Thurrock, I think it's Tory. Croydon, it's no control. And Slough, I think it's Labour. So it doesn't matter what political hue you are a commercial and management and financial idiot. And I wouldn't mind, I would like to see them start taking some of the pain rather than just handing it on to innocent people. There'll be lots of people out there who are really challenged right now, living in these areas, who are suddenly going to get this bill completely unaccepted and unacceptable.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Even Goves.
But you end up with people, Kelvin, sorry, but you end up with people now who are trying to find money from everywhere, OK? They're trying to look down the back of the sofa and just see if there's a couple of quid because the energy bills are going up, the water bills are going up, left, right and centre. Of course, it's partly because we keep funneling money into various different other aspects of the world, but we don't need to go into that. But I can't help but feel as though people might start turning around and going, Kelvin, I'm not going to pay my council tax anymore. I am seeing absolutely no benefit for this anywhere.
Do you know what? I wouldn't normally back that kind of strike that you're talking about, financial strike. I think in this case that there has to be a penalty paid by the people sitting and making these decisions, and there will be chief officers, by the way, as well as idiot councillors. Some of the councillors have got some brains, but a lot of them are in it because, well, I'm not. In fact, they're not in it. In fact, I'm puzzled as to why they come into it, because they have made huge errors. And by the time we found out they've made an error, the business has gone bust.
Exactly, they're off. They're head of some kind of hospital trust or something, and they're coining it in over there before they go on to the head of the water board. Kelvin, thank you very much. Kelvin Mackenzie there, former editor of The Sun. It's always Box Office with Kelvin. Coming up, Rishi Sunak has created a new department of energy security and net zero. Sound like a contradiction? Well, it is, isn't it? We'll be having yet another box office debate, and you won't want to miss it. See you in 3.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind. And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Today, amidst the Prime Minister's rather underwhelming reshuffle, a more peculiar story emerged. Sunak has created the new Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. Strange that our obsession with net zero has led to us offloading the responsibility of burning fossil fuels to other countries. In other words, it has destroyed our energy security. Despite there being 822 trillion cubic feet of gas in the north of England alone, we import 50% of our natural gas to heat our homes. As a result, we hold ourselves hostage to the validity, easy for me to say, of a geopolitical complexities of Eastern Slavic feuds. And if anyone can say that without tripping over it, I will give you a tenner. Like the one that we're seeing now in Ukraine. So it's a ministry of contradictions. What could possibly go wrong? I'm joined now by the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell, and journalist and broadcaster Mike Parry. Mike, I will start with you. How on earth can we have a Ministry for Economic or Energy Security, I should say, and on top of that as well, a net zero ministry? It doesn't seem to make much sense.
It's a bit contradictory, isn't it, Patrick, really, when you think about it? Energy security means that we've got to make sure that we don't black out in the United Kingdom at times of stress when it gets very cold, OK? So that's energy security. But I hope everybody accepts that if we go on this mad plan towards net zero by whatever year it is now, 2030, 2035, that means that will destroy our energy security. Security means there should be power and energy in our country all the time. For instance, and I'm sure you've picked up on this, Patrick, only this morning, the National Grid have asked 2 power stations in this country to start warming up because we might need them to generate more power. Guess why? Because the wind is not going to blow for the next 7 days in this country. It just shows you that we have to rely on all the original sources of power in this country. Some of those are fossil fuels, some of those are gas. Lots of it originates in the North Sea. But we seem to think that we can do all this within 6 or 7 or 8 years without those fossil fuels because the wind will blow and the sun will shine. It won't.
I'll come back to you, Mike. Ed, I'll bring you in now. Ed Gemmell there, who is the leader of the Climate Party. People are struggling to eat, people are struggling to heat, and yet we have to keep behaving in a way that doesn't offend a 20-year-old Swedish girl who's obsessed about the climate. Can you explain that to me, Ed?
Well, apart from the Swedish girl, which I can't explain to you, but the other part I can explain to you is what we need to do is we need to get into people's houses and start subsidising, putting in the insulation, putting in renewables, and getting all of our housing stock up to scratch. I mean, energy security starts at home. We want to get rid of this cost of living crisis. We need to invest. Now, we wrote to the government twice, both the previous administration under Liz Truss and the current one, saying that spending less than half what was spent on COVID, we could insulate and stick renewables on 20 million UK homes. That's every single home that needs to be done.
I do understand that, Ed. I'm going to stick with you, Ed, but I just want to drill down on that because you've said spending less than half of what we spent on COVID and we could do all of this stuff. Well, we're skinned because we did spend that money on COVID, and half of what we spent on COVID is still a lot of money. Ed, how do we afford that without bankrupting ourselves even more?
No, absolutely. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. Having said that, we are at the moment spending money, subsidising ourselves, paying for our energy at the moment at home and in businesses. And that money is effectively thrown out the window. If we were putting that into insulation and sorting out so that we didn't waste as much of the energy and doing it now, it would be capital investment and it would be paid by private enterprise, not by government.
Mike Parrish, shaking your head furiously. Take it away.
How long is this plan going to take? How long is this mad plan of yours going to take? It's at the moment, it's right now, this day, that we've got to look after heating our homes, OK? The mad plan to net zero, we all know, is responsible for hiking up all our energy bills because the cost of getting to net zero means we're all paying for a policy which A, doesn't work, and B, is a fatuous, absolutely nonsensical desire to look good. But what really looks good is if people can heat their homes and cook their food on cheap, reliable energy, and cheap, reliable energy comes from the North Sea and comes from coal-fired power stations.
OK, I get that. And I think one of the things, Ed, that Mike's alluding to there is a little bit, or a lot actually, of virtue signalling that goes on from the kind of people who get private jets to climate conferences, for example. Ed, if you back this so vehemently, why don't you open it up to a referendum? Should we have a referendum on net zero? Let the people vote on it, Ed.
Yeah, I don't see why we shouldn't. What they'd be voting on is the biggest business opportunity on the planet. But for goodness sake, why do people like Mike want us to be behind? I don't understand. Germans and the Chinese for my solar panels. I don't want to pay everybody else. I don't want to be part of the energy system in Europe, which is costing us more money. Let's get on with it. Let's get at the front. Let's lead the decarbonisation revolution and make Britain great again. Why do people like Mike want everybody to be poorer? Why can't you see the opportunity, Mike? Everybody else is going for it. The train has left the station. You can't stop it. Let's get at the front and drive it.
I'm sorry, you want people to be poorer. How come we spend billions of pounds importing fracked gas from America on boats that spew out carbon into the atmosphere when we could bring it up from the earth beneath us in the United Kingdom? Why do you want us to import energy from all around the world when we have it here?
Go on, Ed.
Ridiculous. No, let's do the wind, let's do the solar, let's do the battery storage, let's do the hydro, let's do everything else we can to generate energy, and let's do it here. And if we'd done it 20 years ago, we wouldn't have this problem now. And these houses that we're building now, not fit for purpose, should be insulated, should have renewables on them straight away.
But we haven't got to. Yeah, I get this, Ed. But sorry, just to give you the final, word on this, because we are a bit pressed on. We haven't got a time. We haven't got a time machine, Ed. We can't go back in time. Yeah, all right, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but we're not. We're here now. And what Mike is saying is we need results now. So we know realistically, should we just biff net zero and crack on with what's underneath?
Make mistakes now, and we'll still have the same problem in another 10 years' time. And I'm saying, let's get at the front. Let's make money. Let's get in control of it. Let's see Britain great again.
We're at the back. We're way down at the back. Way down at the back in terms of costs.
OK, both of you, thank you very much. Both of you, thank you. Enough now. Great stuff. Great stuff. OK, that is the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gamble, and journalist and broadcaster Mike Parry. Oh, I just love those two. Thank you very, very much. Now it's time for a quick pummel the Patrick. That's right. Let's see what you guys have been asking me today. Jane says, are hamsters good pets to keep? Jane, I have recently bought a hamster. Yes, absolutely. Sheila is now about 3 months old. She's a Syrian hamster as well. So I'm doing my bit. Michael says, should churches stop referring to God as he? No, absolutely not. And I think that the general erosion of religious beliefs in order to bend over to a woke culture is absolutely nuts. Right, look, thank you very much. Dan Watson is up next. Dan, what you got for us?
Patrick Christie's good evening. Well, what a day it has been for the Conservative Party. Lee Anderson, Deputy Chair. And, of course, Patrick, Lee is a big figure on this show, or has been up until now. So all going to plan, he is going to be beaming in at the top of the show to reveal exactly why he has taken on this job as Deputy Chair.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Fantastic stuff. You've got to love a bit of Lee Anderson. Dan, thank you very much. It's going to be box office. Dan Watson tonight will be with you very, very shortly. Thank you very much to my team. Yes, absolutely. They wrote that in themselves. And you for joining me. Great stuff. Look, make sure you stay tuned. I'll be back again 3 p.m. tomorrow. Take it easy, people.
Good afternoon. Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another frosty one tonight across the south. Some dense patches of fog likely as well. A bit more cloud further north, which will keep the temperatures up. It's also going to be turning increasingly windy. Look at the isobars out to the northwest. As this weather front approaches, those winds will really be picking up in the northwest. But elsewhere, the isobars are well apart. Light winds allowing the frost to come back pretty sharply this evening. Temperatures tumbling. And the fog will also start to thicken up before midnight across parts of northern England, but especially the Midlands, southern parts and eastern parts of Wales, East Anglia and southern England. Some dense patches of fog likely by Wednesday morning. Cold as well, -2, -3, towns and cities. Rural spots much lower than that, but not as cold further north. There'll be the winds picking up and there'll be more cloud. But the winds will strengthen further during Wednesday, getting very, very windy in the far northwest. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place covering the Western Isles and parts of the northwest of the mainland of Scotland. 75-mile-an-hour gusts are possible, particularly as this rain band moves in through the afternoon. That could cause some travel disruption. Could be some disruption from the fog in the south as well, but that should clear by late morning. And then it's another sparkling day of sunshine with temperatures close to average, getting up to 7 to 9 Celsius. Perhaps a little higher in eastern Scotland, but it will be windy here. And then this rain band sinks southwards, bringing a bit of snow in its wake across northern Scotland for a time on Wednesday evening as it pushes